they're in trouble if they're not enjoying it at that age. You're going to struggle. You could just do a small side of game. Like when I coach Gaelic football predominantly, and like when I come, I start with a game. So I have two pitches set up by 20 kids or 25 kids, and it's just 6 aside, 4 aside, and you just start with a game, and like sure, that's better than any laps.
Thomas, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much. I'm delighted to be on.
It's great to have you here, and I'm really excited for this topic today on fun in youth development and why it is so important. And it's a topic we talk a lot about on the podcast, and a lot of sports parents listen. And I think this is going to be such a really great message with all of the work that you're doing in the youth space and just making sure kids are enjoying and also learning and developing. So maybe you can just let the audience know what you're up to today with your work in coaching.
I'm based in Ireland, so I have a GA club, so I deal with the hurling and football side of it, and it's coaching ordinaries, the skills of football and hurling, but also incorporating S&C in a fun way. I suppose that's kind of the way I look at it, is that you're just getting them to play games and do different things, different movements that they don't normally do anymore. They just don't do them, as opposed to focusing on the specific skill of hurling or football or rugby or whatever particular sport it is. So I'm involved with them, and I also go to other clubs and just show them the various games and stuff like that we play as well.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about fun and why it is so important for our younger kids and their development.
Fun is just like it needs to be central to all kids' games, because ultimately they're kids, and even to a certain extent with adults. I've played sport at a high enough level that like the fun, you need to have fun as well. The main reason we do any of this stuff is about the fun, right? There's only a certain amount of kids can win all the time, so it needs to be fun to engage the kids. Like fun boosts their confidence. It's physical, mental health, well-being, because it keeps them into sport. Because if it's not fun, you'll have a lot of kids that I find that will just walk away from the sport. That's not for me. Whereas if you make it fun and focused, and obviously there is the aspect of learning the skills and to a certain extent winning. But if you make it fun for a child and he goes away and he wants to come back next week, that is ultimately our aim. It's not about what 1% of people can win. So you need to try and keep it fun and engaging for kids, because ultimately they're kids at the end of the day. They haven't matured in terms of mentally, physically. So just keep it fun, and it just makes them come back more often.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know what it's like in Ireland in the youth sports space, but in the US, there seems to be this mindset with parents, well, if they're not working hard or looking like they're working hard, it's not worth it. But how can fun be disguised in conditioning drills and just overall development?
The simple example I always give any pair or anyone asks me what it is. If I say to a team, or any coach says to you, we're going to do sprinting today, and you're going to do shuttle sprints of here 30 yards away. And if you line all the kids up and you say, blow the whistle, they go, and then they walk back and they go. They'll do, if you say 10, they'll do the first one very good. They'll do the second one, yeah, very good. But then it'll drop, the third, fourth, fifth will drop, varying on people. And you'll go, last effort for the last two, and they'll make a big effort for the last two. They won't go 100%. Whereas if you could disguise it with fun in a chase game. So if you line up the same 10 kids, you put 5 there, put 5 of them 2 yards behind them, and blow the whistle, and now say run. I guarantee you for 10 sprints, every child will go 110%, because they're being chased, and they won't even notice that they're doing 10 sprints. They won't feel the tiredness of it, because it's been chased, and the person being chased and the person chased them are now suddenly going and using their speed, and they're not just sprinting directly in a line, they're using a bit of focus to tag a person, etc. So that's the simple way I always explain to someone. there's loads of other games which we'll get into later, but that is in this nutshell what you can just incorporate all your drills and put in a bit of fun in it, and the kids don't even realize that they're doing it. And if you don't realize it, you just make it, they'll do it more. And it just won't be a chore because, like, as much as that, how many kids like sprinting? Very few. Like, do it. Like, and even here, I was an adult and we were doing sprinting, and again, it's a long time ago, but it was like, do this, and you were like, oh God, do I have to do these? And you didn't, not that you didn't enjoy them, but it was like a chore. Whereas if you incorporate the fun into it, they don't see it as a chore. They see it as 10 minutes spent, my body.
Yeah, it's always so nice when you turn those sprint drills into games like chasing and you hear the laughter, you see the smiles, and any sports parent should get excited about that. So, have you gotten good feedback from the parents with the clubs that you've gone into and you've designed these conditioning or speed drills with that fun?
Yeah, any of the clubs I got into, and again, I always say it's like, if you look at most organizations or teams or whatever, like there's two sets of kids. There's the top 10 who'll be fine and they'll love it and they'll be the best at, but it's trying to keep the lower half of your group of kids playing because they might be the fastest, they might be the quickest, they might be the best at football or soccer or rugby or whatever it is. But when you do fundamental and games like that, it levels everyone off. You don't have to be the best hurler, the best American footballer, best soccer player, because we can both run, we can both tag each other, we can both do obstacle course movements. So the equality, and that's what a lot of parents have said to me, that it's suddenly my child didn't like sport because they weren't the best at it and it's competition. Whereas suddenly if we went to fundamentalist games and stuff like that, it's, oh yeah, I'm the same as Johnny over there who's the best hurler because I'm faster than him, maybe, or I might be physically stronger, whereas he's a better skill set in terms of the sport we're looking at. But when you bring in the games, it equals everyone out. So the parents are finding that their kids are more engaged, they're wanting to go to the training because you bring in that fun aspect to it. And ultimately, then that retains the kids, which is another thing which we'll probably get into later on as well.
Mhm. What are some other ways you progress these games to just get a better intensity out of the kids? So you mentioned the chasing games. Anything else that you've gotten really creative with?
Um, there's obviously obstacle courses which we use, like we have poles, nets, army crawling under the nets, jumping over stuff. Like the games are as wild as your imagination, I suppose. And what you come up with. I have another one. Then it's just like I find with kids when they're younger is the physicality of exercise, especially in Ireland, Gaelic football, hurling, and rugby. They're all physical sports. There's a lot of body contact, and you're falling and jumping. So what I try to incorporate is games that you're pushing and shoving each other at an early age, so you get comfortable at 4, 5, 6 of falling on the ground. Like there's nothing wrong with falling on the ground. Like before I did this, I used to see kids that fall on the ground and they'd cry and they'd whinge, and that's okay too. That's it because they're not used to falling because they just think. Whereas if they fall in a fun environment where someone they're wrestling and I fall down, they get up and they don't even think about the fact that they've fallen down. Again, they're taking away that kind of external noise that's there in terms of that. So it's trying to disguise, as I said, conditioning. Not conditioning is probably the wrong word. You're dealing with children, but that athletic development, coordination, learning skills into drills that they don't even realize they're doing. That's what I try to when I'm doing any of my stations or any of my games is trying to figure out how can I get this thing without the kids thinking it's always a game and not an exercise or a drill. That's what I try to do most with all of them.
Yeah, and you're setting up that environment for them to learn these fundamental skills. And I think sometimes from the outside looking in, sports parents would be like, "Oh, that looks just like chaos. It looks like a free for all." But on the coach
It's
side of it,
organized chaos. I
it's
keep telling
organized.
you, it's
Yeah, and
organized chaos.
there's thought
Like,
behind it. Yeah.
yes, it might look mad to everyone on the outside, but in my head, it's never going to be 100% working. But yeah, 90% or 80% of that is what I wanted to do. And here, put some kids go off script, and I could even learn from them, or they might be just doing their own thing, and that's fine too. I've no problem with them exploring their bodies and exploring how they want to do it. And I've often learned when I say, "Geez, I see a child and they go in and they do so." I never thought of that, and then I'd incorporate that in next week. So like it's about them exploring their bodies and learning what they can do with it, how they can challenge it in terms of physical stuff. I said there's falling, sprinting, running, all of that stuff. So it's uh, what's the word I'm looking for now? It's trying to get them to learn, but it's definitely organized chaos. I don't just go out and say, here, there's a lot of equipment, play with, or even though I have done that once or twice and it works, but I wouldn't advise it too often. But in general, it is structured and there is method to the madness of seeing 100 or 200 kids outside just running around, pushing and shoving. From the outsider, it does kind of look like chaos.
Yeah, it really does. But just on the coaching side, there is a lot of thought. There's progression behind it. There's a
Yes.
certain adaptation you want. And I've had parents be like, why are you guys bear crawling or crab walking? It just
Hmm.
looks like a bunch of nonsense. And I'm like, well, we're working on coordination, core
Yes.
stability, being competitive,
Yes.
spatial awareness. And then they're
Learning
like,
to move your
oh,
body, all of that stuff. Yes, because
yeah.
they nearly it needs to be nearly a perfect with loads of cones and everything is structured and everything's in a line and everything's looking great, and there is a place for that. But ultimately, a match doesn't mean that you run in a straight line all the time because someone has to come and tackle you. So someone has to have vision skills. You're looking up. You have scanning ability, all that kind of stuff. So like nothing is like in theory, the matches should be played like that. We have 4-4-2 systems, we have various systems, but in practicality, it doesn't work out that way. So having that ability to think on your feet in an organized setup, because again, in any games you're in, there's generally 5 or 6 people around you, and you have to just figure out, okay, well, they do this, I have to do this, and you have to learn to adapt on your feet and get that core strength, that core movement, that core stability, agility is vital for all kids. And we kind of seem to be doing, definitely here in Ireland, we're doing less and less of it. I think a lot of our, what I'm finding here is a lot of our training is coordinated. There's no outside play anymore as much. Uh, I know lots of people have advocated this, but like we're not climbing trees, we're not cycling bicycles, we're not falling, we're not just going out running around as much. We are, but not as much as we used to do it. It's more coordinated. There's training on at 6 o'clock. We go to the training, we come back, we drive. So learning to get outside that. So that's where this fundamental thing. It's kind of like it's like fun games that you did when you were a kid, and you look look out in the field, and there's 20 kids running around just playing, just doing what they want without even thinking. It's free play as such, and that's what I'm trying to create with this fundamental stuff. It's free play for kids to go out and just play. And again, as I said, so I might have a structure there that here you need to do this, that, and the other. And some child might, no, I don't like that. I'll go and do it this way. It's fine too. There's no right or wrong answer. I'll guide them in the way that I think they should do it. But if they do it a different way, so they're just learning themselves.
You touched on something very important there. And I think as coaches, we really excited about the physical benefits, the developing the coordination, the motor skills to support their sports, but that mental piece and being able to make fast decisions because that's what they're doing in their sport. So I think just
Yes.
giving them those different stimuli, those different things to react to. I get more excited about the mental part of all of this, to be honest.
Okay,
And
I
you
do more the
mentioned
physical side, but yeah,
mental health and confidence too. You talked about it's huge, but not many people are talking about that with these fun games.
yeah, and like, and again, I always say to any clubs I go to is like if a kid can move now, if he can master movement at 5, 6, 7, 8, generally they'll be involved in some sort of activity for the rest of their life. Because if you can run, fall, climb, and it might necessarily be the sport that they're playing at the moment with you, but here they might go and play soccer, they might go and play rugby, they might play American football, they might play basketball, but at least you're giving them I suppose not a chance in life, but you're giving them the ability to make a decision that here I can do something, I can run, I can walk, I'm mobile, I can active. Whereas I see it here, and it's probably the same in the States, is that kids by 11 and 12, there's health issues, there's obesity issues, and if they don't move, then chances are they're not going to change. So if you can capture them young enough that they can get the movement skills, as I said, they mightn't play your sport, but they'll play some sort of sport. And ultimately, as coaches, yeah, we'd all love them to play our sport forever, but as long as they're playing something and they're healthy, that is ultimately our aim. And as you said a minute ago, the mental health aspect of that now is becoming more and more talked about. So the more you can get them into that healthy space of exercise, and again, it's not your exercise, but it's running, walking, it's all good for our mental health. So it's vital important that we can move, because I look at the stats now, I haven't got them, but we don't move as much as we do anymore. You could probably see it yourself when you're some kids coming in, you're kind of like, wow, okay. You can see the kids who played it younger and have been movement, parents probably into, you see other kids, and it's scary how not bad their movement, but it's just they're not moving as well as they should be. And obviously they're coming to our coaching or training or very, and they'll be taught it, but it just puts them behind the eight ball straight away.
Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, Simply Faster, and one of my favorite speed timing systems from them, the Freelap. I use it for my own sprint training as well as for my athletes, and they love it. It's super easy to set up, you can take it to the field on your own, and you can get accurate speed times to track your progress. Check the Freelap link in the caption below to start adding timing into your speed sessions. If you know me, you know I love my Freelap. If you're serious about speed, it's time to start timing.
Oh, I've definitely noticed a shift. I would even say just in the past 5 years, I'll
Yeah.
have kids coming in who can't do our hangs and hold longer than 10 seconds, or they
Mm.
can't rock climb on our rock climbing wall, or their parents tell me they can't ride a bike. And
Yeah,
like that was like the first thing we learned as kids when we were in
yeah.
elementary school. So
But even
it's
your bear
crazy.
crawls or your crabs, like I see kids and they can do it for 3 or 4 yards, and you're like, and they're struggling after that, and that's probably a bit of physical strength, but it's a bit of coordination as well. And any of them, like I have an exercise there, it's just called movement, where you go 10 yards either side, and you pick whatever movement you want, and some kids you can see struggling at basic, simple movements that even crawling like a baby. I have a thing you just crawl like a baby, and kids are struggling with that, and that's something that obviously they all did once upon a time. But it's scary, as you said. In the last 5-ish years, it's got worse, and I think it's going to probably get worse before it gets better, which is the unfortunate thing, and that's probably one of the reasons why I got into this whole, like, I originally when I started doing this, it was more the general movement. I was probably naive. I was more into the technical side of it. I was trying to get them that. And then I realized it was working, but not as much as the fun part of it. So I changed tack then after a year or two. I kind of went, let's go down the fun aspect and disguise what I was trying to do in various fun activities.
Mhm. So you mentioned that a lot of kids aren't getting out and doing that free play as much. Would you say also physical education classes in school have gone down where you are? Because in the US, they cut physical education first
Yeah,
in the school system. So is that the same where you are?
it's the same here. Yeah, we've what's called primary school and secondary school, which is 10, 12 and under, and 12 to 18, the secondary. So primary, it's ultimately up to the general team. And again, I the general team is not all. It depends on the teacher. So if the teacher's into physical activity or sport, they'll tend to do a bit more. Whereas there's some teachers that they'll do it to tick a box, and sometimes it would be, oh no, Johnny was bowled in the corner, so you're all missing out on PE, and you're like, okay, that's not really fair. Whereas you need, like, there's a thing I read years. It's not around long. It's called a daily mile. So it's a thing that was initiated in Scotland. So you run a mile every day. So in school, a lot of schools do it. Some in Ireland do it now. Whereas you run a mile or walk every morning for school, and do it, you can walk, and then you don't necessarily have to do a mile initially. Obviously, you might be struggling to start, but eventually, so it just becomes norm. And the stats show that their education is better, the more controlled in class because of that physical exercise. And schools are key because all kids need to go to school. So you have their attention. Generally, they'll do what they're told in school, whereas to go to a club afterwards, they mightn't be interested, whereas you're capturing all the kids in school. So it's definitely dropping here. I know in secondary schools, they get 2 hours a week, or sorry, 2 classes a week, which is 40 minutes, is an hour and a half a week of PE, which again is, yeah, ideally you should be getting a lot more, but there's space issues for a lot of schools. But as I said, there's always a field somewhere or a walk. You can always do it, but it's definitely dropped down on the curriculum in the schools here. It hasn't changed. Like when I was in my kids are in the same school I was in now, and it was 2 classes a week. That was 30 years ago. So it hasn't changed. It's still at 2 hours. And again, the teachers are great, but if I had my way, there should be, I wouldn't say 2 hours a week, but there should be something to try and get them more engaging in school, especially in primary schools, because again, they're younger, they'll soak in more. Whereas obviously when you get to secondary school, the older kids, there's body images, there's all that aspect of it, don't want to do it. There's very few 5 or 6 or 7-year-olds who don't want to go out and run around. So if you can capture it at that age, you have them for a long time. So it has dropped down in the schools. And I don't think there's an obvious, in Ireland, there's no obvious solution to it, because you often read once every year or so, they'll come out and they'll say we need more ED. They'll say it, but they never actually enforce it or kind of make it mandatory, which is a pity.
Yeah, I did want to ask about possible solutions. So I think for the coaching side of it, with us like S&C performance coaches, we should be the solution and kind of make up for this lack of physical education in a way, or even just the parents just get outside as much as you can and play and just do different activities. I think that's the only way forward at the moment while we're in this waiting period.
But the schools, is, I said, and it's hard for parents. Parents are working and come home. It's dark here in the winter time, and the variety of life takes over. I can understand that, and that's where I think the schools would play a major part, because every child goes to school, they're in there, and if you were to get practitioners in there, even not necessarily for one school, but they could share between schools. If there were 3 or 4 local schools, they could share the practitioner. Potentially, I know they do it with in fairness, they do it here with the GA, that they get what's called development officers just for GA, and they go into schools, and they might, a GA development officer might be in 3 or 4 schools, and he goes in once a week and he takes out the class and they do a bit of hurling or football. And it's brilliant. Whereas if you were to do it in a school and employ, again, not full time, but it's just changing the habits and changing the routines of people, that you make it, because a lot of teachers might be into sport. So if you can get the teachers in and they'll learn these stuff and they'll learn to do it, they can suddenly do it, because like ultimately it's going to, like, and there's a cost element to that, but from a health point of view and mentally, physical, obesity, it's going to cost us in the long run, because our kind of health system here is struggling, no doubt, like anywhere else. And a lot of there is issues with weight and stuff like that, and physical movement. Because it might cost you now, but the long-term benefits are not. It far outweighs the cost. So I think schools is definitely. If I had the money, I would put into the schools, because you can capture kids there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that long-term mindset is so key with all this. And it comes back to the fun piece of making sure kids enjoy movement and they don't see it as this obligation or something that leaves a sour taste in their mouth. Because I've seen some clubs, like their U8, U9, U10 teams, really young kids, and they're just running laps around the field and they hate it. And I'm like, well, these kids are going to become the people in their 30s or 40s who just hate exercise at that point. And that's not what we want. So I get really sad when I see that, just the mundane jog around the field, and just no
Laps should be banned.
creativity on the coach's part. I think it's lazy. I think any coach can come up with a fun game, like, but
But the
it's
material is there. Like if you go online, like there's some great practitioners online. Like, and I mean, even if you go Google fun games, there's
yeah,
like there's a mountain of people giving you information. In fairness, a lot of the organizations are giving the information and potential drills. So you can't really say I don't know any better, because if you read anyone nowadays or listen to any podcast, it's like laps are gone. There is fun ways of doing stuff. There is, and like the lack of education or the lack of knowledge is not an excuse anymore.
yep.
There is just mountains of information there for anyone to find any drill you want. And you might only take the drill and tailor it. And I do that with a lot of stuff I find online. Sometimes I take it as is. Sometimes I tailor it to suit myself or to what kids I'm dealing with, because yeah, laps. Jeez,
Yeah. Well,
I'm just getting nightmares.
it's so sad because I have girls I work with now, and they're kind of in an off season, so they're not practicing with their soccer teams. But they told me the other day that they're not looking forward to going back because they run laps before they start practice. And I'm just thinking that's not good. You're not looking forward to the soccer season. And
No,
these are middle school girls. They're 13, 14 years old.
and that's
And
a tricky age. That's the age when they drop out a lot, because
yes.
they get
Yeah.
into secondary school or high school, and suddenly then bodies become into it, boys come into it, etc. Like, it's slightly older here that happens, that we lose kids. But like, yeah, they're in trouble if they're not enjoying it at that age. You're going to struggle. Like you could do laps. Like, you could just do a small side of game. Like when I coach Gaelic football predominantly, and like when I come, I start with a game. So I have two pitches set up. I have 20 kids or 25 kids, and it's just six aside, four aside, and you just start with a game. And like, sure, that's better than any laps. So, like, if you start with a game, and the thing I find then, if by starting with a game and it becomes norm, one, kids come a little bit earlier because in order to get in the game straight away, and they're also then, especially with younger kids, you know yourself, when they come, they're all giddy, they're all chatting, and someone's late, etc. And that just happens. And if you start with a drill, one, they're too giddy because they haven't met someone since last week and they want to chat, and lovely, that's part of it too. And someone is late, and you're explaining the drill three times and trying to get them focused. Whereas the actual game at the start, I find 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending how it goes, it could be 10. If it's going well, you might leave it another 5, 10 minutes. It focuses them and gets their energy out as such, that initial giddiness out, and they can chat away during the game, because it's not a coach game. It's just lads go out and play, and two could be chatting away at each other, and that's fine. You're not going to be forcing them. And then once you start 10 minutes into your training session, the that's gone. You can start with your exercise then, whatever it needs to be, and they're a bit more focused on it, and they enjoy it. Because ultimately, we all play this to play a game. Like, we can do all the training we want and all the running around, but ultimately, most kids just want to play a game.
And it's so bang for buck. I mean, there's so many more benefits with the change of direction, the speed, the conditioning, and then, like you said, it really lights up their brains and gets them awake
Yeah.
for practice and ready to be locked in and focused. And yeah, just the jogging, I don't really see much benefit other than, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe getting their heart rate up, but you can do that with something else.
Oh, but yeah. I genuinely thought laps were gone. I have flashbacks when I used to play rugby, and with one coach used to do lapses, and that was the norm at the time, and it was what it was, and probably the knowledge wasn't there now. And here, I enjoyed laps as such, but still, ultimately, it's yeah. At that age, we were adults. You was probably getting trying to get us fit, but you're dealing with 13 or 14-year-olds. No child at that age should do laps. Yeah.
Can you share some more games that you do? Because I've seen a lot of your videos on Twitter, and you have some really
Yeah.
creative ideas for just the coaches listening to the podcast and also the sports parents. And these games really get your heart rate up, everyone. So don't be fooled by everyone having fun out there.
Yeah. It's ultimately like it's, I suppose there's one there called Hungry Hippo. Remember the Hungry Hippo, the game when you win and you
Yeah,
bite?
yeah.
So I put a dozen hula hoops around, a kid in a hula hoop. You throw cones, balls, bibs, whatever in the middle, and number of different ways. So you say go. Every child runs in, robs like the hippo. Robs one thing, brings it back to your hula hoop, and they just keep doing it till all the things are gone. And then you go rob from your neighbor. So they'd go and they'd rob from everyone. So they're just running around and all that stuff. And it's again a bit of pulling and dragging. Oh, you can't have it, or oh, they're not there. So I run and I see where the decision is made to take from them. And that's just running. You can crawl in, you can do wheelbarrow in, you can do backwards in, you can do crawling like a baby. So any
That's
moves, you're bringing
hard.
all the other movements in.
That's hard.
Yeah. But there is that movement in it, and they've done 10 minutes of physical activity and they haven't even realized they've done it.
Mhm.
So there's a mountain of games. There's other ones. I suppose I've said the obstacle course. Another one I use is, and I thought it's just a really good one, and I love it. It's called Gates. So I set up a square, not a square, yeah, rectangle, or sorry, a square, and I have gates. So there's two poles here. There's four gates to get out of the square. So you put all the kids in the middle, and then you could have either coaches or kids blocking as guards on the gates. So the gates are only a yard wide, and basically it's get out as many gates as you can in a certain amount of time. So kids can use the physicality to get out, so they can run up and here. I sometimes like into all sports, well not all sports, but a lot of them you just have to barge your way through. Some then I could be fighting. You have to make, there's a gap there, so they can spot the gap. They can do stop start. It's literally a game without a ball, and it brings in the physical aspect because I'm stopping you, so I can push and shove you, or I can sneak through. If you're pushing and shoving someone else, I might sneak through, and that's fine. But I have to make that decision when to go and when not to go. Is what we do in any game. It's scanning other space there. I go up and I run up in this space is gone, so I got to retrack. I got to stop, change angle, change the way. So it's as you said, it might look chaotic and it might look, what relation is this to sport? And you go, sure, that's only just pushing and shoving. But like most games, I would argue, are invasion games that you go in, you if you think of basketball, you go up to the court, you stop, you start, you scan, you move, you're moving, you're making decisions on the fly depending on other people. So that's a lot of my games. I try to make it that you're making decisions, you're scanning, and you're using that stop start. They're the kind of the three main aspects when I'm trying to design games or tweak games from other people, is to make it, because that's what we do in matches. We make decisions, we run, stop, start, and we have to scan to see where the space is, where I'm passing the ball, where the danger is. So if I'm the guard on that game, I could be standing here, but someone's sneaking in here to get through the game. So I have to turn this way, and then I stop and I have to go this. So, and that's what you do in games. You're defending here, you're attacking. So it's trying to incorporate game sense activities into the games, so they can just, and again, there's 10 or 15 minutes and they don't even feel it. And actually find it's funny actually when I first do other clubs, a lot of parents would help out and they'd be the guards, and they'd turn around and they'd be lovely and they'd be letting all the kids in and they'd be tipping them. And I said, don't. I said, they actually love the physical contact. They prefer you. The meaner you are, the better. Because I'd be getting kids and I don't throw them in the ground, but I'd lift them controlled onto the ground, and they're falling down. And they actually love it more because then it becomes a challenge. Because if you just keep letting them in, they'll go, oh, this is not good. Whereas by stopping them and forcing them to think twice, that they actually prefer that. That's what, and again, that's what the game is about challenging yourself, figuring out where, oh, I went in this way and I made a mistake, it didn't work. So if I went in this way instead, it might work. In a game, I went this way and it didn't work. I got tackled. Okay, the next time, instead of going that way, I'll turn left instead of going right. I'll twist and I'll turn as opposed to. So it's just about coordinating games your sport into these games to make it more without the pressure of the actual ball and stuff like that. Because obviously, if we take basketball, you have to make a decision with the ball in your hand, and it's a bit more, I suppose, a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a bit more, it's not, it's a bit more structured in terms of I'm making a decision to fly. Whereas the game, you don't have the ball, you're not making decisions. You are, but they're quick decisions and there's no consequences. Whereas obviously if you're in a game and you're practicing and you make a pass, oh, I made a bad pass. Whereas this, you're scanning for the pass, you're not actually making the pass. That's where your soccer skill set will come in, or your training skill set will drills, but it's about spotting the decisions. Where's the mistake? Where can I find the gap?
Yeah. I really love those games. They're really great for just the scanning and the anticipation component. And that's one thing I've seen shift too, is a lot of kids can't anticipate the next play or know when to be a few steps ahead to run onto the ball or to take space. Just because in the US there's a lot of structured skills training, which yes has its place, but I think it's overpowering the fun games and the decision making and the spontaneity, and there has to be that balance.
And and again, when I first started out, it was them linear structured skill things, and over the last, I suppose, 7 years in Ireland, this what's called game sense and game based training has come in. It's really taken over, and I'd say a lot of coaches are doing it. Majority of them are. So you're playing small-sided games or control games, and you're putting in constraints and conditions onto the game to say, so you score. So if you have a 3-on-2, or sorry, 3-on-3. So if you score, then one of your guys has to run over and touch a cone. So then for that 20 seconds, it becomes 3-on-2. So the lads have learned to counter-attack when they're 3-on-2, and then the guy who's got to come in has to make that decision. Where's the trouble? I spot the dangers. Then I have to talk to him. Here, Erica, push out there so I can go into this space. So we've done an awful lot of that over the last, well, I'm obviously based in Ireland, and there's lots of websites about it. There's the Limerick curling team where I'm based. They've won the All-Ireland for the last couple of years. And their coach is a fella by the name of Paul Knock, and he's really driven this game-based training. And a lot of other teams, county, club, have developed or going around that lines to figure out how do you take a part of the game, put it into a drill or a game that it's not a 15-on-15, but you might do 5-on-5 and try and do it in a game, do 3 5-on-5s. So it's a bit more controlled, and you get more game based on it and game decisions with constraints. Because, as you said, linear drills are great; they have their place. But I think the way they're looking now is you should be doing 10% of them, 80% of it should be game based stuff, where kids are making decisions on the fly. They're moving, they're twisting like they do in a game. Because, as you said, if you soccer drills, you ring out around the cone, run out around the cone. It's great at a place when the kids are small, but like no one does that in a game, because someone's coming across, the ball is bouncing, you have to think, you have to scan at the same time, and we're tending to do it a lot more here in Ireland. I'm not sure what it's like in the States, but this game-based stuff has become a big driver of the last 3, 4, 5 years in Ireland. In all sports.
Makes me really happy.
Yeah,
that's great. It's very interesting that you started out with that very rehearsed, structured training. I used to be in the skills world too, and I did the same stuff. And I look back, and it's like, what was I doing? And I realized I was part of the problem. It's crazy,
because
crazy epiphany.
Because I suppose the education wasn't there. It probably was, but maybe I didn't. And I grew up with sport, and that's what I did. And I tweaked it a small bit, but not like compared to what I coach now. And you're probably the same, and most coaches are probably the same. You said, what was I doing 15 years ago? That was just madness. And again, it's an evolution for every coach, but like there's some stuff where you cringe and you go, oh. And I often think, like, I'd love to go back, and like the stuff we're doing now, or most, like, it's so simple, And it's like, why didn't we think of that 15 or 20 years ago? And again, it'll evolve again, no doubt, in 20 years again. But like, you're thinking, oh, that team was so good, or they were decent. But if only I'd incorporated them drills and them, they would have been the best ever, because I would have been the only one doing it and stuff like that. So it is very funny when you kind of, it's what we used to do and what we do today is poles apart.
Yeah. It's a good thing. And you hope that coaches are reflecting and saying, well, I made a mistake there, or I need to make these changes, because that should be the evolution, because you continue to learn. Like you said, there's more information now than ever. And I just don't think it's an excuse for coaches to just jog their players and have them do these boring things with no interest in exercise. I mean, there's so many youth development researchers and practitioners on Twitter, you could chat GPT. I mean, there's an abundance of fun
Just follow
games.
Jeremy Frisch.
Yeah, Jeremy Frisch, he's great. Yeah.
He's the king of it. I take an awful lot from him, and he probably was the one that changed my mindset, because I saw him, I was like, wow, that was my kind of moment, and I kind of went, okay, I need to change what I'm doing. But if you just follow him alone, and after that you'll be fine. And look here, I want you to follow him each year stuff, and there's other stuff there, and you'll fall into that. But I said him alone is just. I see his tweets, and I'm envious. I'd say, oh, I'd love to have a gym like that. It's just so cool. It's brilliant. But to the ultimate point, there should be no reason why you shouldn't be doing that today, because there's so much stuff there for you. As you said, ChatGPT, there's stuff there that's and like back to your the fun. Like ultimately, our job is to retain kids. Like I always as I said earlier, a handful of people, a handful of teams. One team has to win the trophy. If there's 30 teams in the league or 20 teams, only one team wins it. So that's 5% if long for kids. So that's 95% of people not winning. So ultimately, our job as coaches, and even if you do win, it's about retention of kids. It's about having the kids retained here, because if you don't have kids, sorry, I was going to charge this laptop. Sorry, I just on the switch. If we can't, trophies are nice when the kids are small and stuff, and it's nice reward occasionally to win that, and for the kids as well, it's probably more than good. But my ultimate success would be I had 20 kids at under 10, and now at under 18, when just before they come at us, I have 25. Are the same kids. Like that is ultimately all of us as coaches should be looking at, is just the retention of kids, because again, opposite of it, we play matches here in Ireland, and okay, we lose and we're all upset. A minute later, the kids have forgotten about it. But us as coaches, then we're the ones that are going home thinking about it, how we did this and what we did. And we actually stress about it more than the children do. They generally, after 5 minutes, are talking about Fortnite, gaming, a match on telly, etc. We're the ones that actually overanalyze it at times. And there's nothing wrong with that to a certain extent, because we'll probably overanalyze to make ourselves better, make the kids better, etc. But it's just, we need to but to retain the kids, you need to make it fun, because ultimately I want to get on and play with my buddies. I want, what I find with the fundamental stuff we do is your club becomes the fun place. When I first went into a lot of clubs, the big thing they say is, oh, it's the fun place. My own club, when we started it, it was like, oh, I want to get on to the fun place. So, and kids just want to go and run around and have fun, because you have, if you go in, and what I tend to tell clubs is use a fundamental. We did it as a separate night of training, so it wasn't the night that soccer was on. It was a separate night from kids 6 to 12, and you just have it fun. There's no soccer balls. It might be for throwing, but not for soccer. There was no hurleys and helmets, what we have here and stuff like that. There's no rugby balls. I've done it in rugby clubs. There's no tackling. So you get the kids into your club. Ultimately, that is ultimately what your job. If you can get them in and make your club the fun place, I like it. And then you say to them, oh yes, now on a Saturday we do rugby as well. And they go, oh, what's that? Well, yeah, we go down all the same kids, and you incorporate your fundamental into it, and you do a small bit of rugby. then you slowly get them into and they hook, and then Saturday morning becomes the norm. I go to rugby, or I go to basketball, or I go to here. Like, that's ultimately what we need to do, is get kids in your door, because I often say to people, it's like having the best clothes in your shop or the best stuff online. But if no one knows your website exists or your shop exists, it's no good. You need to get kids, because it's not like before when kids automatically gravitated to your club. There's so much different activities. There's so much stuff that they don't need to do, like gaming. They just might be into sport. So by get them into your club, give them a taste of it through fun, especially at the smaller ages, and then your own product, whether it be soccer, basketball, hurling, that has to sell itself in terms of how you coach and how your club is run. But ultimately, get your kids in the door and show them, look, this is a new place to go on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Sunday. You just have to create habits from at a young age that I go to X club on a Saturday morning. And by getting them in, because you'll always have the certain kids who will always go in because their parents played soccer, their parents did that, or they're into it. But a lot of kids aren't into it. And the big thing I find with fundamental is a lot of people are saying, my kid was never into sport, but now they like it and they're going to try rugby. They're going to try it. And again, that is up to the rugby club to sort that out and sell their product, make their training fun and engaging for the child. But my job, but my aim as with fundamental is to get kids in the door. And after that, lads, you need to be able to make your kids and make your experience better for the child. And that's on you. But if you can get kids in the door and get them into the habit of going somewhere to training, it makes, because it's very easy to sit at home and put on the computer and play the games, or mom and dad can sit around and put on Netflix, put on all that stuff. It's harder to go outside. Whereas you want your child, ma'am, I want to go train, as opposed to you've training today. It's a bit wet. Oh, mom, I'm okay, ma'am. Ma'am is, and our dad are happy to say that, yeah, that's fine. Whereas you want to, ma'am, I'm going training, come on. And nobody's flashing it. No, ma'am, I'm going training. And that's what you need to get, that mindset in the kids. And we need it more and more. And again, what we said earlier with the physical and mental and the obesity issues that are at the moment, we need it more and more.
I think that's a great place to just wrap this up. And we honestly need you in the US at some of our clubs, because there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of quitting or club hopping, and kids just aren't happy because they're not having fun, or they don't feel like they're developing into well-rounded athletes. So I think this conversation was very needed. And I think a lot of people it will impact.
And my last point, I suppose, like, I do fundamental as a program. So, like, as I said earlier, with the sprinting, you obviously have to do your skills, and you have to learn your skills, and you play your game. But for that, like, if you have an hour training, I've said it lots, you should be doing 15 minutes minimum of fundamental or athletic development, a minimum. And I would say, if the younger they are, the more fundamental athletic development. But you can do it through fun games, and like, kids just want to have fun. Like, ultimately, that's why they go down there. They go down to have fun and hang around with their buddies. It'd be like adults going to the bar. If I was going to the pub or the bar and I was bored and I wasn't having fun and hanging out with my mates, so why would I bother going? Sure, like, the reason you go to these places is because it's fun. You have a chat with your friends, you have a laugh and a joke and a bit of serious chat. But like, ultimately, that's why we do anything in life, is to have fun. And think that we have a choice in. I suppose obviously things we have to do, but I think we have a choice in. We only do it because it's fun. If it's a chore, whether you're an adult or a child, you're not going to last too long, because eventually you'll just say, I won't go this week, and then next week I won't. And eventually in 3-6 months you're just going to quit. Which, if it's fun and it's enjoyable, no matter what age you are, there are 10 that you'll probably keep going, because it becomes part of your norm. You're chatting to people, you become engaged with more people. So kids, if you make it fun for your kids, they will stay. And any of the clubs I've gone into, like, their membership has increased by 20-30%. They're just more kids because it's fun. And that's ultimately what you want, is more kids coming down to your club.
Yeah. Well, that's brilliant. And Thomas, I'm going to encourage everyone listening to follow you on X. So I'll leave your link in the caption below, if that's okay, because I want them to see what you're posting. There's some really great game ideas. Again, there's endless information out there, so no excuses, everyone. Just make sure kids are having fun. That's always the most important. We want that enjoyment for movement, not just during their sports career, but when it ends, because it will end one day.
Yeah.
So
And it could be when you're 17 or 18, or it could be when you're 28, it could be when you're 48, it could be whatever, but at least you can move. If you can move, you'll be active all your life. That is like, if you, and you sort that out at 6 to 12, you're set up for life.
yeah. Awesome. Well, Thomas, this was amazing.
Thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed the discussion, and yeah, I'm sure people will be following you here shortly. And guys, if you like this, or if this really impacted you, please share this episode with someone who you think needs to hear this, whether it's a coach, a parent, or a player. Just get the message out there, because this is so critical and so important in today's world. So thank you, Thomas, and I'll see everyone
Bye.
next time.